Dear learners, I welcome you all to this third module on designing for communities of inquiry model in online courses of the second week course on Introduction to Distance and Digital Education. As a beginner in this course, you have learned about the basic concept of distance and digital education, the need and relevance of distance and digital education, and how it has emerged in the present situations in the previous modules. Here, let us discuss how pedagogy should be followed while designing the online courses for an effective teaching. The main objectives of this module are to explain the relevance of designing online courses, to identify the need and relevance of appropriate pedagogy for designing online courses for an effective academic environment. So friends, till now we have learned about the background of distance and digital education as well as relevance of digital and online education in the 21st century in the first week course as well as 2 modules of the second week course. As we have understood how digital transformation brings the transformation in the present day education system. Besides, there is also an urgent need to assess the tools and intervention strategies of digitalization while bridging the gaps between implementation and participation in the digital transformation. In this context, how educational institutions, particularly the open universities or ODL institutions, have been playing a crucial role in terms of mobilizing the capacity of lifelong learners in terms of digital skills and their level of employability in the present knowledge society or techno-enabled world. As we have discussed that education is also accepted as the prerequisite for the acquisition of knowledge, enhancement skills, development of attitudes and values, and so on and so forth. Actually, in today's society, there is a growing demand for human capital and enhancement of manpower. Education creates human capital for the benefits of society or for the country as a whole. Apart from the conventional education, open and distance learning or open and distance e-learning or digital learning, systems should play the role for promoting the need-based education by launching some need-based and skill-based courses that can fulfill the needs and requirements of the stakeholders in connection with the industrial and vocational recruitment. Thus, it is important to explore how the use of various educational pedagogies should be followed for ensuring an effective learning system to all. So, pedagogy is a technique or is an approach or is a process or a method that help immensely to make teaching learning effective. Due to the explosion of science and technology in the present technological era, we need to look at the up-to-date way of transactional behavior in pursuing the world-class education. The behavioral taxonomy, which is designed so systematically, suggests that it could guide the learners or teachers or the instructors for using the appropriate pedagogical tools and techniques to receive the mission and goal of educational instruction. In fact, in a learner-centered approach with the help of pedagogy, learners can reap the benefits or internalize the curriculum or the content in his or her own way of learning style. Therefore, the relevance and the use of pedagogy should be linked with the changing environment of the teaching learning process where various digital technologies are used for transmitting and disseminating the knowledge and information to the learners into a great extent. The traditional talk and talk methodology is being continuously replaced by different new devices or techniques like collaborative learning, project-based or teamwork activity, personalized and customized learning that would provide plenty of opportunities to the learners for bringing out their quality of creativity and innovative ideas and thoughts. In fact, The use of this type of techniques in the teaching learning process is essential for the teachers, the academicians, and the academic practitioners in order to motivate the learners so that they can be able to explore different applications of knowledge and skills in their practical fields and also able to live as productive citizens in the real sense. In the industrial era, particularly the use of ICT in the audio system has made many changes in the entire educational transaction of teaching and learning, particularly in the post-pandemic situation. Everyone should be well equipped with digital skills, which are the prerequisite for getting jobs and livelihood in the digital economy. The utilization of ODL and online teaching or learning has made learning truly global. Along with this, the whole pedagogy of education is to make people functionally literate or digitally skilled. It is because people want such education that ensure better sustenance of living. Therefore, the entire educational system is converted from traditional education system to independent ICT-based learning system. This kind of education system thus helps the learners to possess the relevant digital skills that help to promote inclusive and equitable education and lifelong learning opportunities for all. Besides, for promoting and facilitating the sustainable education or lifelong learning education opportunities, various educational pedagogical techniques or methods are evolving in a massive way that anyone can access the world-class education at his or her own place and pace. In this context, in the modern industrial era, the modern interventions like open educational resources, the massive open online courses or MOOCs have provided the platform for opening up the minds of the people hungry of knowledge. The higher educational institutions, mostly the open and distance learning institutions, has the flexibility to equip mostly the young people with relevant that prepares all the people of the nation to become responsible citizens who value a democratic and pluralistic society. Therefore, it is the need of the hour to see at what extent and what are the ways the various online courses as MOOCs or OERs or open educational resources are designed and implemented for creating the knowledge movement or providing learning opportunity to the people, particularly in the context of India. If we look at the impact of COVID-19 and the emergence of online learning, then we can say the educational system across the globe are confronted with a crisis never seen before due to the lockdown caused by the COVID-19 pandemic since December 2019. The consequences of the crisis are most apparently being felt in the socio-cultural, economic and political arena of the society as a whole. As a part of the reports provided by the UNESCO and UNICEF in 2020, more than 1.5 billion learners of all ages from around the world are affected due to the closure of schools and universities due to the COVID-19, which equals around 90% world's total enrolled students. To slow down and prevent the spread of the pandemic, many countries have issued and followed strict protocols such as complete lockdowns, shutting down of buildings involving schools, universities and many such educational institutions, maintaining social distancing, working from homes, providing flexible working hours to the employees or closing down the institutions where people could infect each other. This situation has forced all types and levels of educational institutions to operate at a distance and put certain emergent online teaching practices into place to mitigate the crisis. But the fact is that the sudden closure of the educational institutions has further widened the learning inequalities, following which the vulnerable children and youths are hard hit. In a developing country like India too, such problems are being perceived and efforts are being made to immediately sustain the education system. At the time of the crisis, when people are undergoing trauma, stress and psychological pressure, we should perhaps ask ourselves, if we should focus on teaching educational content online or teaching how to share, collaborate, and support each other with the motto of providing therapy, empathy, and care. But unfortunately, in a country like India, with specific challenges to meet at the current situation, the one-size-fits-all concept may not work. Before putting certain steps into practice, we must take into consideration the many variables, including the target group of learners, their social and economic background, their age range, their access to technological infrastructure, and so on. The developed countries may be advantageous enough to initiate emergency online teaching. The same may not be valid in every country. For example, in India, the problems like digital divide between the rich and the poor, varied opportunity of the online technology, as well as the infrastructure among the states of the country, the haves and have-nots are to be seriously addressed, because the poorest and the most vulnerable sections of learners are the hardest hit both by the pandemic and by the quick response applied by the educational institutes. Sadly, therefore, while many other countries have been suffering from the interruption to education, in a country like India, the digital divide can still be perceived as one of the greatest threats to the implementation of the successful online modes, as many still suffer from scarce educational opportunities. If we consider the case of higher education in India since 2016, the Indian government has adopted a policy for offering online courses in an indigenous platform like SWAYAM, through which equality, quality, and inclusive education are sought to be established, and which, in our view, should yield positive results at the time of the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, we may assume that for making education accessible to all, there is a need of using non-discriminatory and inclusive pedagogy for transacting the curriculum in the teaching learning process. ODL being a learner-centered approach, there is a need of implementation of techniques such as inquiry-based problem-solving technique, customized learning, and collaborative learning, which are today considered ways towards higher order skill learning, and which are essential for making the 21st century learning more comprehensive and competitive. Hence, while designing the course contents, particularly the blended and online courses, the developers must be concerned about the value of the academic discourses so that everyone can access the equitable learning opportunity without facing any difficulties. Besides, one must be aware of the social issues like combating inequalities, using flexible approaches of pedagogical challenges, maintaining access and affordability in harnessing the technology while delivering the online courses, providing importance in maintaining well-being and mental health under psychological domain must be the major issues of concern while designing the online courses. Thus, the pedagogical knowledge regarding the usability of online and blended materials and the know-how, technique, or skills should be developed among the teachers and the learners so that they can properly use the technological tools in order to suit their academic needs and requirements. In this context, it was well defined by Boskert in 2019 that distance education and ODL can be defined as any learning activities within formal, informal, and non-formal domains that are facilitated by information and communication technologies to lessen distance, both physically and psychologically, and to increase interactivity and communication among learners, learning sources, and facilitators. So, if we look at using the appropriate pedagogy for ensuring an effective learning process, then online and blended learning requires systematic planning, designing, and careful formulation of the aims and objectives of education so as to create an effective learning ecosystem. Though during the pandemic, teachers were often engaged in variety of online activities, in essence, that is rather a temporary solution and not online learning per se, which should involve all the four quadrants of online learning. As opined by Boskert and Sharma in 2020, such a distinction will play a significant role in the development and prosperity of online education in the post-COVID world. In this regard, while considering online and blended education, one should go beyond just uploading educational contents and instead focus on the changing needs of the learners, the changing context of their learning, and availability and accessibility of feasible technological tools to facilitate such learning, which also means that one has to use different strategies and approaches to address the individual cases with different priorities. In fact, the teachers should rather play the role of facilitators, and there is a need of providing training to the teachers on the use of the latest technologies in order to ensure the effectiveness of the existing system of teaching and learning. Besides the social presence, teaching presence, and cognitive presence, which are the three pillars of quality online or blended model, should be reflected in the contents provided, having strong linkage between in-person and online tools. In fact, the use of online and blended techniques in the teaching learning process is becoming more and more significant day by day, and the pandemic has been a blessing in disguise in asserting a transformed role of online and blended learning for all types of education in a country like India. Time will, however, say how e-teaching using technological tools such as Google Group, Zoom, and other meetings app, learning management system, that is LMS, should be universalized in the country with the implementation of the NEP 2020 by the Government of India. The model like community inquiry is a learner-centric model or pedagogy, designing the online courses into more engaging way between the mentors and the mentees, as well as teachers and the learners. The community of inquiry theoretical framework is originally created in the late 1990s in support of early online design with text-based discussion. The community of inquiry theoretical framework shone significant light on the need for interaction, collaboration, and connection online. Significant developments have occurred in distance and online education since the original conception of the community of inquiry framework. Over the last 2 decades, the community of inquiry framework has been tested, applied, and adjusted for use across delivery methods and disciplines. The COI framework is known to be highly effective in the learning environment for which it was originally designed. A good fit with further developments through emerging technologies for learning, and it is very compatible with blended as well as online learning. So the COI framework represents a collaborative approach to inquiry that fuses personal reflection and shared discourses for a deep and meaningful learning experiences, according to Garrison in 2016. The framework rests on the assumption that engaging, meaningful educational experiences leading to deep learning outcomes occurs at the convergence of three presence: cognitive, teaching, and social presence. This presence emerges through learner-centered teaching and learning. Both presence and learner-centered approaches produce a more active learning climate, as suggested by the foundational thinkers in education like Dewey in 1933 and Vygotsky in 1997. Using the collected shared individual experiences as a significant point of reference in the construction of knowledge structure is critical to both the learning processes and learning outcomes. Beyond content or subject matter expertise, engaged and active learning is seen as a key opportunity for developing competencies in higher order thinking skill, which leads beyond content knowledge into high levels of intellectual development. In short, the community of inquiry framework requires that the learning process is explicit through meaningful engagement opportunities where students explore multiple types of learning materials rather than teacher-centered direct delivery of content. Drawing from the early direction of Schwab in 1966, this teaching practice moves learners deliberately through active inquiry processes. According to Cerf, the active inquiry process starts by using questions and problems to stimulate thinking about the subject. When ready, teachers can invite learners to synthesize by identifying overlaps and relationships between the concepts or variables. As learners advance through foundational knowledge in a particular subject, questions and or problems are presented. Learners are encouraged to discover the path to answers themselves. As knowledge and learning skill develops, learners identify the questions, problems, methods, and answers in the same subject themselves. The teacher provides guidance to shape, correct, and verify knowledge claims and facilitates learning, creating a community of inquiry. This multi-layer pedagogical process is supported first by creating community through the original three presence of COI framework, that is social presence, cognitive presence, and teaching presence. Teaching presence rather than teacher presence is so named to allow for teaching functions for both teachers and learners in a community of inquiry. While the teacher or instructor of record plays a leadership role, teaching presence is carefully defined to encourage and allow for peer teaching. To become an effective online teacher, one must deconstruct traditional teaching presence or traditional assumption about effective teaching and learning and rebuild it in reference to online teaching and learning. Teaching presence is defined as the design, facilitation, and direction of cognitive and social processes for a purpose of realizing personally meaningful and educational worthwhile learning outcomes. The central organizing activity of the COI is teaching presence created by the integration of design and organization of a course and its community, facilitation of learning, and direct instruction of content. In these activities, the teacher who is instructor of record or the temporary peer teachers who emerge in the course at varying times for various purposes provide support for the facilitation and direction of cognitive and social processes. The generation of satisfying learning experience among students is noted in empirical studies. This satisfaction is also linked to other presence in a significant way. For example, Sia and B.D. Girona in 2009 report that the learner experience of teaching presence affects the emergence of social presence. Social presence in the most current definition is defined as the ability of participant to identify with the community. For example, the course of study, communicate purposefully in a trusting environment, and develop interpersonal relationships by way of projecting their individual personalities. Social presence is the ability of learners to project their personal characteristics into the community of inquiry, thereby presenting themselves as real people. This could be contributed to the increased attention being given to emotional presence, not identified as forced presence but in discussion as a critical element of COI development and experience. These definitions of social presence mediates design thinking about students' social activity, distinct from academic activity and in combination with it. The subcategories identify the design elements required created through pedagogical processes that will allow its respective presence to emerge. For social presence, these categories are personal expression, group cohesion, and open communication. Personal expression is expected to go beyond dialogue and interaction about the course activities and content, an important part of the overlap between cognitive and social presence and between social presence and teaching presence. Personal expression means encouraging students to go beyond dialogue strictly about course activities and content into personal reflections and the presentation of self. Group cohesion is fostered through the explicit identification and mutual agreement regarding shared purpose and communal leading space. It emerges when represented by a sense of belonging and acceptance, where individuals connect and have an affinity for other individuals in the group. This can be seen where meaningful, if short-term, relationship develop and expressions of a sense of trust and safety are noted. Open communication, the third sub-element of social presence, supports both personal expression and group cohesion by allowing time and opportunity to express oneself freely and connect with others. This opportunity can be created in asynchronous virtual meeting places or in synchronous session. Cognitive presence is defined as the extent to which learners are able to construct and confirm meaning through sustained reflection and discourse in a critical community of inquiry. While not named as academic work in the COI, it is in this space that academic debate, deliberation, and discussion occur. In the overlap with social presence, this course is supported in the course design with multiple opportunities to critically reflect and share personal meanings and applications derived from the knowledge constructed. Cognitive presence is the extent to which the participants in any particular configuration of a community of inquiry are able to construct meaning through sustained communication. Cognitive presence rests on four distinct but overlapping subcategories of practical inquiry: triggering events, exploration, integration, and resolution. A triggering event begins the process of inquiry through stimulation and presentation of information, ideas, or questions new to the audience. It requires attention and thought but needs less effort than the other three categories. Exploration provides the opportunity to examine new material closely from multiple perspectives. Integration of a new material is the process of constructing structures and alignment of new information on its own and in relation to other material to the point of deep and meaningful understanding. The fourth subcategory, called resolution, brings the region for covering the material, answering the questions, or solving the problem to a logical conclusion. This pedagogical processes supporting the resolution phase of cognitive presence brings closer, whether temporary or relative, momentary cessation of the topic at hand. The resolution phase in the temporary but definite closure of inquiry, which often ends with the identification of questions still to be answered and issues yet to be addressed. Emotional presence encapsulates the effective side of learning, originally identified as part of social presence. The element of emotion and learning has been further identified as something that permits the model. Why move higher education course designed to community-based learning? Learning communities support learner engagement and satisfaction as well as deep learning outcomes. While this is true for all modes of teaching and learning, design and delivery, the strategies for creating a sense of community online are quite different. Community is also a powerful tool in support of inquiry-based learning. Creating communities of inquiry in blended and online learning is one of the most researched pedagogical approaches in universities and colleges. Emerging technologies have changed the ways in which we bridge the distance between teacher and learner. For a distance education perspective, these changes also carry forward from earlier generations of distance education the unique roles for learners and teachers, broader opportunities for access to learning, and additional requirements for learner self-direction. These enduring characteristics of distance education create a type of online learning that is pedagogically distinct from more traditional lecture-based teaching delivery in university. Dear learners, hope you may clear now what is pedagogy and how the community of inquiry theoretical framework is an effective model for more engaging learning environment. So, see you in the next module. Thank you.